folks. Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 129, here with my always brilliant and beautiful co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing today, bro?
Doing excellent, man. Happy to be back talking fights with you. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Ooh, boy, do we have a card to get to with UFC 273. How fire was that?
It was a great card. Lots of drama. Yeah, lots to unpack there.
Lots to unpack there, guys. Here's what's on tap today. First, I'm going to start off with my opening question for Fight Geek. Then we're going to do a quick recap and review of UFC 273. What a card that was. After that, we're going to jump into our preview and picks for UFC Vegas 51, Luque versus Muhammad 2. Then we're going to really quickly touch on preview and picks for Bellator 277, McKee versus Pitbull 2. Then it's on to my favorite section, listener questions and more. So that was a mouthful, Fight Geek, but here's my simple opening question for you. Khamzat Chimaev and Gilbert Burns, in my opinion, put on one of the greatest three-round fights in UFC history this weekend. Chimaev won, in a unanimous decision, 2-1. He is now going to fight Colby Covington, supposedly in a 5-round main event on ABC. If he gets through Colby, he'll fight Kamaru Usman. So my question is simple. On this current run that Khamzat is on, is he going to beat Colby and get the belt? Is he going to beat Usman? Do you see him losing to Usman but beating Colby? How does this go for him, these next two fights in particular?
Yeah, that's a tough question. There's a lot of possible scenarios there, and with us not seeing him in 5 rounds, that Colby fight is just so interesting. I would say right now I could see him getting by Colby, but losing to Usman pretty squarely at this point, unless we see, more improvements in his next performance. There's still a few too many question marks for me to think that he's going to beat a fighter like Usman, who I currently place as the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter on the roster and in the world.
As do I.
So I think that's a tall ask right now. We did just see him, tested versus Gilbert Burns. I do personally believe that was the best version of Gilbert Burns that we've ever seen. So I was really impressed with Khamzat, but I just don't know that he carries enough power really to back off Usman, and I think Usman would just keep advancing and be just a little too much for him. Colby, on the other hand, I really give Colby the cardio edge.
Wait, don't play it so safe, Fight Geek. You need to tell me exactly what you think will happen. Not, this could happen. Is he going to beat Colby? Is he going to beat Usman in this run?
I say, I really have a hard time saying he's going to beat Colby because we haven't seen the 4th and 5th round, and we know that Colby keeps coming, and we actually saw Chimaev start to slow a bit. So actually, I rescind my previous answer. I don't think he beats Colby or Usman at this point.
Now that's
maybe
interesting.
In the future, but not in his next 2 fights.
Now that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to very respectfully but strongly disagree, at least on the first point. I genuinely think that Khamzat's going to beat Colby. I think Gilbert Burns was a really, really tough matchup because Gilbert Burns has incredible power that Colby simply does not have in his hands.
Well, you keep saying that, but I keep saying on the counterpoint that Colby pushes a pace that Gilbert absolutely does not. So they're two completely different types of fighters. Khamzat actually chose to stand and, on the
he
feet
went
with
for
Gilbert.
takedowns. He just was minimally effective because of Gilbert's defense.
He was. His own words were that he was feeling threatened by Gilbert on the ground, so he decided to keep that fight standing and take his chances there. So I know.
Sure,
Gilbert
but that's part of what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Well, no,
Gilbert got it to the point where Khamzat didn't want to take it to the ground.
Yeah, well, I think he was just doing risk management. I think he liked his chances versus Gilbert's striking more so than he did with his grappling. But with that said, I think we got off topic of the question.
No, but we're just talking about, we're jumping right into it here. And frankly, this is the fight that we're going to talk about the 2 title fights, folks, but Burns versus Chimaev overtook everything. That's just a fact.
Incredibly dramatic fight.
Incredibly dramatic. So here's my main question for you, Fight
I do
Geek.
think Chimaev was the rightful winner, however.
No, Okay, I hear you. But here's my question for you: did Hamzat Chimaev's stock go down due to this performance? I'm seeing a lot of people saying that it
Absolutely
did.
not.
It
Not in
did
my
not.
opinion. Absolutely not. He went from being an unranked fighter to going to war with the number 2 ranked guy in the world and beating him outright. I don't see how his stock could have dropped.
I agree with you, but I think I
People are
agree, but we have to give credit to Gilbert Fight
well,
Geek
yeah. Well, that
because
giving credit to Gilbert is only proving how great Hamzat Chimaev is as an unranked guy with less than 5 fights in the UFC, stepping up to a prime Gilbert Burns in his absolute peak best form we've ever seen him at, and turning him back. You cannot be impressed with Gilbert Burns and not be over the moon impressed with Hamzat Chimaev. I don't understand that.
I don't really disagree with you there.
I mean,
I don't
Gilbert
really
Burns was
disagree. It's
as
more
good as he's ever been. He
yeah,
pushed the
I'm just
pace
saying
like
a
he
lot of
never
people
has.
online, are saying, "Oh, well, now that Gilbert gave him a tough fight, he's not all that.
Well,
Chimaev is
Gilbert was
overrated."
giving Usman a tough fight for a short while.
Oh,
Had some
I know.
setbacks, came back, and then we saw Gilbert put a great game plan together against Wonderboy and beat him using his mind. So this is an evolved version of Gilbert Burns that Hamzat Chimaev, relatively raw. What's it? His 11th fight in his career.
Yup. Number 11.
Is beating a guy who's absolutely in his peak, a world-class top 3 fighter with black belt Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu credentials, who's a power puncher, who's been in there with all of the best fighters of his generation. Like, how can you be, I don't get how you could be impressed with Burns and not Chimaev. Chimaev looked amazing, put on an exciting fight, answered every question, got knocked down, got back up, kept marching forward, landed big shots. Is still a good quote on the mic after the fact, wants to run it with, the top guys right away. I thought it was about as good as you can do. The guy's not going to come in there and starch every fighter in the roster in 14 seconds. That's not how this thing works.
No problem. But okay, do you agree with? I tweeted this earlier to some controversy. A lot of folks didn't agree with me. What else is new? But I said if that had been a 5-round fight, Gilbert Burns is knocking Hamzat out. I thought Hamzat was getting more tired.
Think
Burns was driving him back with
option.
haymakers. The momentum was swinging into Gilbert's favor, in my
But
opinion.
you never know. With Gilbert throwing those haymakers, and, he has a tendency to slow down, which I'll say this was actually, in my opinion, this was probably the best cardio I've seen Burns in. He was still able to press the pace late.
He fought great, didn't he? He really did.
Relative to his fight style. Yeah, he fought amazing. I think that fight was, nip and tuck all the way through to the end. But that's not – that fight being nip and tuck, again, is not a detriment to Chimaev. That's
No,
a
not at
feather
all.
in his cap.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on with this fight is I really thought that Gilbert, when he was walking to the cage, I thought he looked a little nervous. And I think, in my opinion, that he left that cage feeling more confident in himself than he did when he walked into it. I think he walked away saying, "Hey, I can do this." And I'm not sure he felt that. I'm not sure he felt that way immediately before the fight. To be honest, I thought he looked a little nervous.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really catch that. I think it's normal to be nervous versus a guy
Well,
like
of
Chimaev.
course.
There's a little bit of an unknown.
No, don't get me
there.
wrong. I'm saying Gilbert Burns is a top 20 pound-for-pound fighter right now, and he proved it. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely, but I'm saying if he proved it, Chimaev proved it too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you think that Colby beats Hamzat Chimaev right now?
I certainly could see Colby pressing a pace with a ton of volume, enough defensive wrestling to get a split decision. For
Does he
sure,
have the chin? Does he have the chin to withstand?
We've never seen him knocked out cold. And to be fair, I think Hamzat Chimaev's knockout power is a touch overrated. He throws kind of, he's not the, the most graceful striker on the roster. He's
Not at
he's
all.
a little unorthodox. His stuff comes from different angles. I'm not sure that I know I've seen the flash knockouts that he's had, the Gerald Mearshart knockout and whatnot, but I don't think that that's the kind of fighter he is. I think he's going to be more of a TKO style fighter.
Okay, that's fair. And listeners, we're going to move on from this fight in 1 second, I promise. Sorry, last question, Fight Geek. What do you think should be next for Gilbert Burns? He's now called out two folks. He's called out Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. Was very clever in calling out Jorge, threw a little bit of shade at him, said, I deserve a big money fight like Jorge, then I'll go back to fighting real contenders.
Wow.
I loved the shade. I loved it.
I don't think the Jorge fight obviously will happen. Jorge's going to need to
Well, who
find
should
a
Jorge
win.
fight besides Gilbert, though?
Nate Diaz?
We've already seen that garbage match. Jorge will win.
But
Why? Why do we need to see that again?
Well, it's not about you. It's about Jorge taking a winnable fight that will make him more money.
Who cares about Jorge winning again? I certainly don't.
Jorge and his management, I'm sure, are very interested in it.
I don't know if Dana has time to really care about Jorge's feelings.
I can almost guarantee you that Jorge versus Gilbert Burns is not an option next. Jorge needs a
Well,
win.
yeah, because Jorge he'd shit his pants. I mean, he would start crying hysterically. He'd do anything. He'd jump out a window to get out of that fight.
Well, he doesn't have to do that because he just won't sign the contract to fight him.
Okay.
So, anyways,
are we ready to move on?
Burns? Well, do we want to pick somebody for Burns? Because I don't think Masvidal's that guy.
Well, he called out Burns and he called out Nate Diaz.
Well, we also have this Luque Muhammad fight coming out.
Burns isn't fighting Luque. They're best friends. Burns is in his corner this weekend.
Oh, that's true. So the only way that works is if Muhammad wins, because I don't think he's getting a title shot off of Luque. Maybe you do Muhammad versus Burns.
Oh God, but I would love that, and I'm being such a jerk. I'm smirking with such an evil look on my face. I would love.
All right, let's
Burns Muhammad. Oh man, I hope we get that one. Rest in peace, Bilal, baby. Sorry.
He's got to get through this weekend first. So all
right, moving on.
Stuff to cover.
Aljamain Sterling defeats Peter Yan via split decision. Real quick, how did you score this fight? Did you score it for Sterling or Yan?
Night of, I scored it 3-2 for Yan. After
So did
rewatching I scored it 3-2 for Sterling.
What? Whoa! What?
Yeah, I mean.
Explain that.
Well, what do you mean?
Why did you change it?
Well, I think in real time I gave the first round to Peter, and I think after watching it, it's not as clearly around for him.
I still think it's Peter's round. Okay, that's fair. I think Peter won the first round, but look, all credit to Aljamain Sterling.
I'll say this. Aljamain Sterling
won.
He crowded Peter Yan. He didn't allow him to get comfortable at all in that fight. Even when Yan had some success, it wasn't sustained at all because Sterling was closing the distance. It wasn't an exciting fight, but it was incredibly tactful by Sterling. So he certainly earned it. Was a little disappointed by Yan.
Yan looked horrendous. Can we talk about that quick? What was going on with him? Just as a quick example,
what was going on with him? Aljamain Sterling is absolutely monstrously jacked and strong for that division, and he was just being positionally dominated.
Here's my quick question. Yan had a whole bunch of takedowns in the first fight. I don't even remember the number, but it was extremely high. It was, I think, in the double digits.
Well, Aljamain Sterling.
Yan didn't go for one. Yan didn't even go for a single takedown.
I think it's clear, though, if you look at this version of Aljamain Sterling and then the previous one, this version was in the best shape of his life, obviously.
Much better.
He looked enormous in the cage. Peter Yan's not a big bantamweight to begin with, and I think the strength difference was it was eye-opening. This is obviously, I called this the biggest lopsided matchup on the card last weekend and couldn't have been more wrong in the other direction.
We both got it extremely wrong.
So you got to give Aljamain his credit here. He was incredibly dominant in certain areas. And like I said, just at 135, his strength really sets him apart. So was a little disappointed Yan couldn't get the fight where he wanted and get in rhythm. He was just 1-2 shots and then Sterling closing the distance. And then he was fighting him off or on the ground. So really just a rough night for Yan. Didn't see it going that way. So what do you see next here for both guys?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I think that Peter Yan needs to have a 5-round main event showdown with Sterling's gym partner and teammate, Merab Dvalishvili. I think that's 100% the fight for Yan. 5 rounds. Yan, Dvalishvili.
I like that matchup. For Yan, though, that's basically taking on the same exact challenge he has now with a nonstop wrestler. Is he going to want that fight?
Look. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Jan's in a bad position. He's down 0-2 to the champ. Whether he likes it or not, that's a fact. So he's gotta do some heavy lifting right
True,
now.
but unless you think Aljamain Sterling's going to go on 3 or 4 fight title reign, then he could be coming back around for a new matchup soon after one win. If Aljamain loses the belt next,
maybe bantamweight's also very stacked.
Oh, of course, yeah. But I think Aljamain Sterling versus TJ Dillashaw next, right, makes the most sense.
Well, so Aljo said today on Ariel Helwani, he tried to dismiss that. He said, the more I think about it, TJ doesn't deserve it. I want Jose Aldo.
Oh, wow.
Which is classic Aljo. Look, Aljo's Aljo.
I love
He's
Jose
Aljo.
Aldo.
Aljo's going to do his Aljo thing.
At this point, Jose Aldo does not need to be in that title shot. Come on.
I mean, it's a very Aljamain Sterling thing to do. Let's be honest here. Come on.
TJ just beat Corey Sandhagen.
Were you expecting Aljo to try to take on the toughest competitor? I mean, what are we talking about?
Well, I don't necessarily think that TJ. I think Aljo has a good chance, defending versus TJ.
He has a good chance against anyone. If we're being honest, he has a good chance against anyone.
Yeah, especially in the form he was in last weekend. So, to me, TJ makes the most sense. That's a big fight. He beat Sandhagen. Jan, he's a little tougher. What do you do with him?
Merab, 5-round fight, Merab.
That's a tough one. I could see that, though. Merab versus Peter Yan. Then there's all the storylines with.
Well, there's good heat because it's a continued gym rivalry.
Exactly. So yeah, that makes sense. So perfect.
All right, moving on. The main event: Alexander Volkanovski defeats Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie. 45 seconds of round number 4, standing TKO, and Herb Dean got in the middle, almost kind of like boxing match style. There was no knockdown at the moment. He just decided Korean Zombie had had enough punishment. And
Which he had.
I was going to say, not only did Korean Zombie not win a round or a minute, he didn't win a single exchange. I was so floored by Volkanovski's performance. This was Alexander Volkanovski's. This was the performance of his career, in my opinion.
This might have been the most dominant featherweight performance in history.
This was Volkanovski's best performance in his career, for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a virtuoso performance. I mean, it was one of those things you were watching, and I literally felt sorry for the Korean Zombie about 4 or 5 minutes into that fight. I was like, it wasn't even a contest. Alexander Volkanovski blew me away with how crisp, technical, laser sharp, lightning fast. And you know what? He's a super nice guy out of the cage, but he's showing a little bit more of that mean streak. That was just mean.
That was real mean. There were a few words exchanged during the fight. Volkanovski seemed to be legitimately feeling a little bit sorry for TKZ. I believe there was something like they were pointing at the canvas, and Volkanovski said, "Do you want to go right here?" And Korean Zombie said, "Yeah." And then Volkanovski said, "Are you sure?" And Korean Zombie said, "Yeah." And then they threw, and the fight was finished shortly thereafter. I believe. Don't hold me to that. That might have been the 3rd round, but I know that they were talking to each other, and I know that Volkanovski was taking pity on him.
Yeah, well, it was a lopsided match. I think it's it sucks for the Korean Zombie to be on the other end of that beating because, Alexander Volkanovski was going to do that would have done that to a lot of guys that night. Again, much like Gilbert Burns was at his all-time best, that was by far the best Volkanovski we've seen to date. And
absolutely.
Easily the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in my opinion.
I agree. So I don't want to ask too much about this because we've got at least one amazing listener question that touches on this. But really quick, Volkanovski said that he thinks that either next for him is either a 3rd max fight, and I respect him for mentioning that, or he was saying that he wants to potentially move up to lightweight. He feels that he's too far ahead of people at featherweight, and that this fight showed it. So my question for you is simple, what kind of potential success do you see Volk having at 155, if any success?
Well, I mean, he would have success. I personally don't like Volk at 155 at all. Just do not like it. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's really short. he would be giving away a lot of his advantages. He'd obviously still be quick, but he wouldn't be as powerful for the 155ers. And he's an all-time great featherweight. Like, I want to see him fight featherweights and dominate featherweights and prove.
But after the third, okay, let's say he beats Holloway a third time, right? Sorry to cut you off, but who else is a really big name top contender that's banging on the door?
Well, by the time he fights another fight and has another 4 to 6 months break, we're, a year away. So I don't know who will present themselves. But, there's guys out there. There's the Yair Rodriguez's of the world. We don't know what he'll do in the next year.
But why not? Why not let Volkanovski go for the double champ thing just for fun? If there's no one that's really screaming that they deserve that shot after Max.
Well, if he fights, let's say Bryce Mitchell, chokes out Brian Ortega in his next fight.
Yeah.
I mean, Bryce Mitchell's an interesting matchup down the road. There's matchups for him.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I don't disagree at all.
Evloev is down there. Ilia Topuria is down there. So there's guys. I mean, Ilia Topuria in a year and a half, 2 years from now versus Alexander Volkanovski as a sitting 5 or 6 time defending champion. That doesn't sound good to you?
Hold on. Topuria moved up to lightweight, unless he's back down.
No, he just moved up for the one fight, to my knowledge. He's a featherweight.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think he should be, but I'm not sure that's 100% the case.
I mean,
but okay, fair enough, regardless, yeah.
What if Josh Emmett comes back and knocks somebody out and looks impressive? You don't think that Josh Emmett versus Volkanovski could be interesting down the road?
Oh, of course it could be. Of course. I'm just saying, if I'm Volk, I understand why I'm eyeing potentially a second title for legacy purposes.
I don't see him... I see him struggling with a lot of the lightweight division.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I wouldn't give him a great... I mean, Beneil Dariush is the only guy in the top 5 that I would even think he has a shot against.
Interesting.
And none of them interest me personally.
Beneil's actually a weirdly odd fighter, so that's an even interesting... Okay, all right. I don't know if I agree with you, but we're going to get into that more later. We got to move on for now. So, real quick, Mackenzie Dern beat Tecia Torres via split decision. I'm not going to lie, I thought Mackenzie stole it, but I had her as my pick, so I'll take it.
I agree. I had Tecia winning that fight and think she did win it. Either way, it was interesting and entertaining. Mackenzie Dern snuck it out, had a couple, cool submission sequences. So, yeah, big win for Dern. She continues to... I don't know what we learned from this, but, she's 12-2. She continues to climb. I'm sure she's not too far from a title shot at this point.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to Mark Madsen getting a unanimous decision against Vince Pichel at 155. Mark Madsen climbed to 12-0. What'd you make of this? Vince was not happy afterwards.
Yeah,
he was
definitely
really
a ho-hum, low-output performance.
Vince was screaming about Mark being a coward after the fight.
I know, but Vince is screaming that like he was, bat out of hell, balls to the wall, bringing it. And he was kind of just tossing out, soft, lazy jabs and circling away too. So it's not like he was bringing a ton of action.
Absolutely. I agree.
But, I think, this was a dominant wrestler winning by position. A little bit boring in my opinion, but a win's a win.
Agreed. All right, moving on to the prelims, and we cannot cover all of these, but I definitely want to touch on undefeated Irishman Ian Gary climbing to 9-0 against Darian Weeks in a unanimous decision. I thought Gary looked horrendous. I think he's so annoying when he talks. I'm not going to lie, dude. I can't stand this guy. Like, I can't effing stand him. He might be the most annoying fighter in the UFC. He might be the most annoying one. In history, maybe. Like, I hate him. I want him to get slept.
But did you know he's the 3rd best talker of all time?
Dude, oh my God. When he's comparing himself to Chael and Connor, I was cringing so hard. He's like, from something to nothing. Irish brothers, me and Connor. It's like, dude, shut up. Like, stop talking now.
I think he's got a little bit of the cart before the horse here. He's clearly
talented. He really annoys me.
Yeah, I think that he's young and he's excited to be where he's at. I think he may be drinking his own Kool-Aid.
I
wasn't
thought he
overly.
barely beat Weeks. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, he did barely beat Weeks, but you had Weeks beating him, didn't you?
I did, and I got roasted. Guys, absolutely, that's fine. No problem. No problem. I'll stand by that. I had Weeks winning
then
that.
you can't come back next week and be like, he barely beat Weeks, you know?
Gary sucks. Ian Gary's not there. Okay, I feel like an armchair quarterback who's like really fat right now.
What about Ian Gary versus Edmund Shabazian?
Ooh, I'd be rooting so hard for Edmund, obviously.
They're kind of similar, aren't they?
Edmund's way less irritating. No? Wait, what about Ian Gary? Oh, I know. No, I know what to make.
Kind of.
Wait, Ian Gary versus Shavkat Rachmanov versus Ian Gary.
Well, isn't Rachmanov going to get that Magny fight? Sorry, the Edmund fight. He's 185. I forgot.
Oh yeah, you're right. I knew. Okay, but anyways, Ian Gary. I mean, what do you potentially think of that?
What?
Ian Gary versus number 15, Shavkat Rachmanov.
I mean, that would be, burning one of your top prospects. I don't think they would do that.
Shavkat will be just fine. I'm not worried about him.
No, I understand, but the UFC is clearly grooming Ian Gary as like an Irish star that they can market, so they're not going to toss him to another guy who's clearly way ahead of him on the development side.
Okay, well, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I thought Ian Gary's performance against Weeks was, pardon the pun, very weak. Oh, see what I did there?
All right. Did you want to? What about Raquel Pennington winning, like I said she would, versus your girl Aspen Ladd?
Yeah, Aspen Ladd, not looking great. She made weight, looked great in that sense, but just can't.
What is with her fight style now? Like the last handful of fights, she just does that confused.
She's not as aggressive as she used to be.
No, she's like stuck in a glitch and can't.
I think my honest theory, Fight Geek, is that the Jermaine Durandamy really quick knockout, I think it freaked her out and changed her.
Because since then, I mean, she doesn't even throw strikes that look like they could hurt anybody. They're just kind of pawing out there. She's slow. She's tentative. Yeah, it's bizarre because she was one of the top prospects in that division not too long ago.
Absolutely. She was pretty much next in line to fight Nunez for a little bit. So
and it's hard to imagine, who she can beat at this point.
Yep. Okay, moving on real quick. Mike Mallet gets the TKO via left hook to ground strikes against Mickey Gall, forcing Gall to fall to 7-5. Is it time to cut Mickey Gall?
I mean, the UFC's not going to cut him because they have too much invested in him, but his performance...
How much do they have invested in him?
Well, I mean, think about all how many years now have they been in the Mickey Gall business since the Contender Series and the CM Punk?
I mean, they cut Sage Northcutt. They cut Sage Northcutt off of wins.
Yeah, well, Sage Northcutt clearly was not going to be a great fighter. He had one fight and has been basically retired since.
But Mickey Gall has more promise?
I think he was more dedicated to the game for sure. I think Mickey thought he was going to have more promise. I think he's probably surprised to be where he's at, but this was a bad performance.
Yeah. So Mickey falls to 7-5. I mean, he got his ass whooped, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, Mickey looks like the perfect guy to go over to PFL.
Ooh. Weirdly, I understand, and that makes sense. Yeah.
So he can be on ESPN, little lesser competition.
Yeah. Last fight I wanted to cover was Alexei Olenek defeating Jared Vandera via neck crank from scarf hold at 3 minutes and 39 seconds of round number 1 of their fight. Alexei Olenek climbs to 60 wins, Fight Geek. 6-0. 60 wins and 16 losses. That's incredible. 60 wins in professional MMA. I mean, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I mean, that was low-hanging fruit, though. I think that one was easy to call. But, 60 wins is 60 wins. The guy has been around forever and clearly still viable.
Absolutely. Okay, so are we ready to move on to our preview and picks for UFC Fight Night 51 Luque Muhammad 2?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys. We're not going to cover everything on this card. Not going to lie. I'm not crazy about this card overall. I don't think Fight Geek is either. If you guys know what I'm talking about, you know. This is not a great card. I mean, right?
Yeah, there's not a ton of meat on the bone here, but I do like the main Luque versus Muhammad. Who you got here?
So this is Luque versus Muhammad 2. It's worth noting this is a rematch. Luque won the first fight, and I've got Luque winning the second fight, and I've got him winning it via third round TKO stoppage.
Nice. Yeah, kind of like the Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan fight where, Sterling was able to stuff Yan and keep him from getting going. I kind of see this fight going that way. I think Bilal will, with his physicality and wrestling, just keep glued to Vicente and not allow him to really get warmed up in the striking. And I've got Bilal Muhammad via unanimous decision.
Wow, you've got Bilal Muhammad, huh?
Yeah, Bilal Muhammad's a beast right now.
Dude, now I'm
with
surprised. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, and also it's hard to beat a guy twice, especially that far apart.
What's Bilal gonna do, man? He's got the most boring style in the entire organization. I just
explained it.
He's not gonna be able to do that. He's not. Luque's too good for that.
Aljamain Sterling's got a boring style, and he just beat the exciting striker in Peter Yan.
Sterling has a much more exciting style than Muhammad. Sterling goes for submissions.
Yeah, well, I'll give you that, but it's a pretty strong comparison.
Okay, all right. I think Aljo's got a more exciting style than Bilal Muhammad does, for sure. But, okay, fair enough. I've got Luque in that third round, so we definitely disagree there. And then I think that's really, really everything. I just wanted to cover the main event for Bellator 277, McKee versus Pitbull 2, right?
Yeah, why not?
All right, so first we've got the tournament champion co-main event. Vadim Nemkov, 15-2, versus Corey Anderson, 16-5. 5-minute rounds. Who you got on Vadim Nemkov versus Corey Anderson?
I'm going to go with Nemkov here. Obviously, I think Anderson's live in this one, but I think Nemkov will be a little quicker to the punch, and I think he'll TKO Corey Anderson in the second round.
Ooh, interesting. I've got Nemkov via unanimous decision. I think Anderson's going to find a way to survive.
Yep. He's been a little chinny in the past, so
Absolutely.
I think that'll rear its ugly head here.
All right, moving on to the main event for the featherweight title again. AJ McKee, undefeated 18-0, taking on Patricio Pitbull, 32-5. McKee versus Pitbull 2. This is the rematch for the Bellator MMA Featherweight Championship. I'll go first here. I've got AJ McKee via second round knockout. I think Pitbull will last a little longer, get to the second round, get knocked out.
I think that Pitbull's eyes will be opened based on the previous performance. I think he'll see the final bell. I got McKee via unanimous decision.
Okay, so McKee said very recently that I believe he enters free agency after this fight, potentially, since Bellator was unable to come to a initial deal with him. So if he gets to 19-0, he said he'll be looking very seriously at the UFC and would want $1 million per fight to stay with Bellator. I feel like that might not happen. How do you see AJ McKee potentially doing in the UFC's 145 featherweight division?
I mean, if he beats Pitbull for a second time and he comes in as a 19-0 young superstar, I see him having a bright future for sure.
Wouldn't that would add some interest into featherweight?
No, 100%. I think if he's calling the shots like that, then he should ask for a title shot immediately as well. I mean, let's go all in with AJ McKee here if everybody thinks he's as special as he may be. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think even someone like bring him versus Sandhagen to debut. That'd be an amazing fight.
I love that. I think that might be the fight. actually. I love that one.
What I don't want them to do is bring him over and have him beat up old guys like Frankie Edgar or Jose Aldo. If he comes over as a 19-0 superstar making $1 million a fight, put him in a number one contender fight or a title fight immediately.
Yep, and I think number one contender fight is a way to go. Obviously, the UFC. I mean, they're not going to give him a title fight right off but they might give him a title eliminator. So
yeah,
I think that's realistic. Okay, all right. So with that, Fight Geek, are we ready to take a really quick break and then come back with listener questions and more?
Yes, sir.
All right, folks, we'll be right back after this. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 129, here with my brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek, and it is now time for my favorite section of all, and that is
All right, let's get into them.
Let's do it. All right, so this first question comes from the man, Jamal the son of Thomas, at McTavish Clan, Cyrus. Love Cyrus. He says, just tell me how good is Aljo? What are his chances of beating TJ Dillashaw? Hashtag AskSplitPod. So why don't you start us off, Fikey? What are Aljo's chances of beating TJ Dillashaw?
I mean, he has good chance. I mean, I'm a TJ stan. I think that TJ could potentially have a little better footwork than Jan and keep the fight standing with his defensive wrestling and win a decision. But, Aljo, that's a pick-em fight to me at this point.
Yeah. Hard to disagree. I would, if I was forced at gunpoint to put odds on it, to be honest, Fight Geek, I would maybe put I'd make Sterling like the slightest of favorites, maybe like minus 120, minus 125, like real tight. But I think I'd favor Sterling by just the tiniest bit.
Agreed. Maybe 110?
Yeah. Real close, but I think I would favor Sterling just by a hair or two. Am I crazy?
Exactly. No, that's where I see it. I do think that TJ Dillashaw is nuanced enough with his skills to make it interesting, and much like the Sandhagen fight, win a controversial or super close decision because that's how nuanced TJ is.
Absolutely. Okay, next question comes from our man Louis. That's at Macer Louis. And he says, hashtag AskSplitPod, where do either Holloway or Volk go when either one loses the series? It seems whoever loses the series will be heavily favored, in my opinion, almost guaranteed, to beat any other contenders in the featherweight division, preventing new title matchups. So, I thought that was a great question. Do you have any thoughts on that, Fikey?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously, if Max were to lose 0-3 to Volk, he would have to go to lightweight, in my opinion.
Well, Volk said if he beats Max the third time, he wants to go up to lightweight.
Well, I mean, that's him saying it. I don't really love Volk there. I think Max being down 0-3 to the champion clearly means his only path forward would be at lightweight, where if Volk were to lose the series, he would have to have 3 more fights with Max? So,
well, right. I mean, technically, but realistically, I think if Max won 2, they'd probably just screw Volk over, to be honest.
Well, let's say that Max wins the next fight. Volk can't go to 155 because then he's going to have to fight Max.
No, if Max wins the next fight, they're making a 4 for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Much like Moreno and Figueiredo. So, and then at that point, you'd have to have a 5th fight. So, if anything other than Volk,
I don't know, but that's where we disagree a little bit, Fight Geek. I understand your thinking of why Volk would deserve 3 out of 5, but I'm telling you that the world ain't fair, and that if
Right.
Holloway won twice in a row, they would, Volk would just be screwed.
Well, how could you say that? At that point, you'd have the two greatest featherweights in the history of the UFC tied at 2-2. You couldn't leave it that way.
I mean,
It would be the most unique situation in title history.
I don't want to see them fight 3 more times. If I'm being honest, that's me.
I don't either.
I don't want to see it, man. That sounds horrible.
It does sound horrible, but historically, the two best guys fighting 5 times and going 3-2 versus each other is a really sexy storyline.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That's a fair point. Okay. I think that's a good point there. So
if Max loses, definitely 155. If Volk loses, I think he has to fight Max again.
yeah, I agree with that. I agree. Okay, moving on. This question is from our man, Eric Buchert. That's at ATANAK74. He says, which do you think is more important for Mackenzie Dern's title aspirations? Improving her wrestling takedowns or improving her striking? #AskSplitPod.
Improving her ability to listen and execute a game plan. It seems like every time she goes in
brutal.
there... Huh?
I said, ouch, brutal, like you're going hard on her.
Well, I mean, she just gets lost in the sauce in there, it seems like,
Yeah.
She always ends up kind of, I mean, she's a great fighter. She obviously can lean back on her jiu-jitsu, but every time she goes in there, it doesn't look like there's much happening intentionally. So I think her ability to implement a game plan would be huge. But other than that, continuing to develop her striking with Jason Perillo is very important. She routinely, loses technical striking exchanges because she throws big looping shots with her eyes closed a lot of the time. So yeah, striking for sure. Because even if her defensive wrestling is weak, she can pull people into her guard and dominate in those grappling situations. So I don't even think that's a problem.
I agree with you, frankly. I agree with you. And I agree that because Mackenzie's so tough, I think a lot of it has to do with her toughness and her ability to move forward taking punishment. She goes in there and it's like her plan goes out the window. Her plan goes out the window the second the fight starts,
Every time. Because think about how dominant she is in the grappling situations.
Yep.
Yet, she stands and bangs all the time. One thing she could definitely work on, and I don't know if I brushed over this part, but her offensive wrestling takedowns would be more important than her defensive wrestling.
Yeah.
She struggles on her entries for her wrestling takedowns. And if she was able to get people to the ground a little easier, obviously her jiu-jitsu is about as good as it gets on the whole roster. So
totally
takedown
agree.
entries and game plan.
Agreed. Okay, moving on to our main man, Juice. Love this guy from the Friendly Sparring Podcast. Y'all give it a listen. It's a great show. That's at Friendly Spar Pod. He says, in honor of Cub Swanson and Doohoo Choi getting indicted into the Hall of Fame, what are some fights you would like to indict into the UFC Hall of Fame? #AskSplitPod. Love that.
First one that comes to mind is Anderson Silva versus Michael Bisping.
Yup. Is that not in
that
it?
Fight. Huh?
Is that in it? I feel like that might be in it. Maybe not. I have no idea.
The fight's not in it, but I think both guys are.
No. I know they're both in the UFC Hall of Fame.
But that was a very dramatic 5-round fight in the middle of the night over in London.
Silva thought the fight was over. He thought he knocked out Bisping at the end of a round.
Destroyed Mike's face, led to the title shot. Great fight.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree
you
there.
Got one?
Yeah, I got one. I got one right now. How about this? Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev. How about that?
How about Conor McGregor versus Chad Mendes?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, 100%, right?
McGregor versus Diaz 2.
Yeah.
McDonald versus Lawler 2, although that's probably in there. Is Gaethje versus Gaethje versus Johnson. Gaethje Johnson. How about that?
Yeah, that goes without saying. Gaethje Johnson.
I got one. Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira was a underrated awesome fight. Gustafsson knocked him out in the fifth, late in the fifth, if I remember correctly.
Highlight reel uppercuts.
Yep.
So that's a good list. What about let's keep thinking.
Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler.
I call this fight out all the time, but Cyborg versus Nunes should be in the Hall of Fame 1,000%.
Yeah, even though one could argue it wasn't that competitive.
But it was enthralling.
It was very enthralling, of course.
Yeah, it was amazing. Let's keep going. What else do we got here? Dustin versus Dan Hooker, maybe?
Yeah. Hooker came a few strikes away from finishing Dustin in that fight. That was an interesting one, no doubt. Okay, are we ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we've got our question from my man, Paul O'Kelly. That's at Sparks F1. Love Paul O'Kelly. He says, do we need to see Burns take on Khamzat again in the future if Gilbert can win a few fights in a row to get back into the title picture? Also an admission, I thought Chimaev was overrated, but damn did he stand and bang that night. More, please. Yeah, so
I definitely think that's a fight we'll see again.
Burns definitely deserves a rematch. I mean,
100%.
more than
Burns,
anyone that Khamzat's ever fought.
Burns has already come out and said that he just wants it within his next 3 fights, which I think makes sense. You know, they can circle back around on this fight at any time, any place. People are going to want to see this rematch. So, yeah, I think we'll see it again down the road for sure. And, yeah, I mean, I don't see how people can praise Burns and then say Chimaev's overrated. Both of them looked amazing that night. I think both of them are top of the food chain, and I think Chimaev proved a ton.
Absolutely. Again, we agree on that. We do. So, okay, next question. This comes from our main man, Pat Tobin. That's at Pat_Tobin, Tobin. He says, do you believe we'll see Henry Cejudo fight this year? If so, will it be because the UFC pays him what he wants, or because he accepts the deal offered, or a bit of both? And if it happens, who will his first fight back be against? #AskSplitPod. So for those that don't know, and Fikey, just in case you don't know, I think you do, Henry Cejudo announced over the weekend on Sunday that he is absolutely back in the USADA pool. He's coming back. Specifically, he's got his sights set on Alexander Volkanovski. He claims that no one can challenge Volk except for him, and he's coming for that belt.
Yes, I did see that. I did see that Dana wasn't very responsive to that.
Well, I think Cejudo is okay with the idea that he's going to need to fight at least once prior to getting a title shot. So what if you make Cejudo versus Holloway, for example?
Well, does Max not have a fight on the books right now?
Nope.
I mean,
not right now.
So
he's widely believed to fight Volk next, obviously.
Exactly. So I don't know why Max would want to take that fight. You know, didn't he just beat Yair and Cater?
Yep, he did.
So Max Holloway didn't even need to take those fights. Took them, won them. I don't think Max is going to be taking on Henry Cejudo in some kind of,
Okay, so who do you see Cejudo? Let's say if Cejudo returns and he's trying to get into lightweight, who's he fighting? Maybe Yair Rodriguez next? Brian Ortega?
How about Brian Ortega?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with that one.
I mean, Brian Ortega's a big star.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay.
So I do think we see him by the end of the year. I don't think it has anything to do with the money right now. I think that as a competitor who's been out for a while, has a new family, sees other guys getting the spotlight, I think the competitor in Triple C wants to come back. I think it's that. I'm sure that the UFC would like to have him back. He's not the biggest draw in the world, so that's why Dana's kind of, not ushering him in with open arms. But I think this is a competition-based return.
Absolutely. And by the way, Cejudo is beginning to refer to himself as potentially C4 if he wins the title. And I can't lie, that's fucking awesome. That's a great name. How did he think of that? That's great. It just works, man. It just works.
There's no chance.
This guy knows how to market, though. You got to admit.
Yeah, market to the lowest common denominator, I guess.
I guess that makes me an idiot because I loved the C4 line. I love C4. I think that's funny.
You said it.
Okay.
All right, let's keep it moving.
Okay. So this question comes from Eduardo at Landa Crew. Love Eduardo. Split Podcast OG. He says, do you guys own any fighters merch? If so, which one's your favorite? #AskSplitPod. I'll start off real quick. I'm staring at my refrigerator right now, and on the top of it, I've got a bobblehead of Daniel Cormier. So that's a particular piece of fighter merch that I like. It's very silly, but Daniel Cormier watches over me as I eat my meals. He sits on my refrigerator as a bobblehead. Also, my favorite t-shirt that I own by far is the original Korean Zombie shirt. I've actually got a few Korean Zombie shirts, and to be honest, I think at least two of my three favorite shirts are Korean Zombie ones, and then my third favorite shirt is probably a Daniel Cormier shirt that isn't particularly cool, but it's memorable to me because I wore it going to UFC 214, Jones versus DC2, and there wasn't a single DC shirt in the entire stadium except for mine.
Tell us about your no love shirt, though.
Oh yeah, I have a Cody Garbrandt no love shirt.
You used to wear it.
Why'd you have to call me out like that, bro?
Because you used to wear it so proudly.
I mean, yeah, so whatever. I'm a no love fan, whatever, bro. Yeah, what's up?
Well, I'm an adult, so I don't have any merch from any other
Shut
fighters.
up, asshole.
But I do have a couple pieces of memorabilia. I have some autographed Ken Shamrock memorabilia that's pretty cool and I like. And then my favorite shirt is I have an old school retro UFC with the original logo with the guy with his arms out. And it's red, white, and blue like Captain America. So that's kind of my fight shirt. But yeah, no idol worship over here.
Oh, just relax. Just relax.
But I'm sure DC appreciates the proceeds.
Uh-huh. This was before anyone liked DC, remember. He would walk out and everyone would boo him except for me.
Well, you're a trendsetter.
I am. All right, so moving on. I don't know why that's as funny. That should not be so funny. Moving on. Our next question comes from the man, Joe Garza. That's at Casino Joe Yahoo. Love this guy. He says, "Dear King Casuals, I feel like I can call y'all King Casuals. Can the King of Cringe beat Volk? And are you excited about Triple C's return? Hashtag AskSplitPod."
I think he missed one thing. It should be Dear King of the Casuals. Right?
Is that a reference to you?
No, it's a reference to you.
I am only the king of diehards.
All right.
Everyone who follows me is a diehard.
Volk? I mean, I think he'd have a hard time. He's a smaller guy. He's going to have some ring rust. Volk is in his absolute prime and ascending and getting better. I would really like Volk's chances there.
I think you're really being a little disrespectful to Cejudo. Can I just say that? I really do. You're being very dismissive. Very dismissive.
Well, I don't think he would beat the 145 arguable greatest fighter of all time.
You don't have to think that Volkanovski will lose, but you could at least say Cejudo will give him a rough night. You know.
I don't believe that. I don't believe Cejudo.
You really don't think so? I mean, Cejudo beat the crap out of Moraes to win the belt. He beat the crap out of Cruz.
Moraes had to retire at 33 because he forgot how to fight.
What about Dominic Cruz?
Dominic Cruz is 86 years old.
That's also true. All right. Fair enough.
So, and TJ Dillashaw was, cutting weight and doing things that we won't mention on this show. So,
like taking EPO and shit. Yep.
I mean, I love Triple C and think he's an unbelievable talent and don't want to take anything away from his run. But I think, it's a little inflated to think that he would come back and beat someone who's the number 2 fighter in the world, essentially 2 weight classes above his own. I think that's a tall ask. I think he would.
2 weight classes. Whoa. Let's be really clear. Hang on a second. Give Henry Cejudo his due. 2 weight classes above his own. He was the bantamweight undisputed champion when he retired. I understand.
Based on 1 fight.
No, 2. He beat Marlon and then he beat Dominic Cruz.
Right. So yes, fine. My point is he beat 2 guys who are not exactly trending in the elite title contention direction.
Dominic Cruz is 2-0 since fighting him. But okay, yeah, go ahead.
You're trying to tell me he's a true bantamweight because he's small at bantamweight.
I mean, he won the friggin' belt. Whether you think he could be as small as a piece of sugar, he won the damn belt.
Well, Marlon Moraes is a small bantamweight as well. So you're going to put him in there with the guy. I just think he's too big. You're not going to change my mind.
You think Sterling would beat Cejudo? I'd take Cejudo over Sterling.
I think it's closer for sure, but I think that Cejudo's a better all-around fighter and would have the defensive wrestling not to get dominated, but I don't think on the feet versus Volk he would fare very well at all. You saw how he was doing with leg kicks versus Moraes the first time, and Volkanovski's leg kicks are criminally underrated. That guy kicks like a mule. It looks like it's painful.
That's true. Okay, can't disagree with that. So, okay, next question comes from our man, MMA by Milliken. Love Milliken. Great guy. He's got his own podcast, guys. Check that out. It's great. He says, if Bilal Muhammad gets knocked out again, will he cry? Alexander Volkanovski thinks he can battle at 155. Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. Hypothetically, who you got? Hashtag AskSplitPod.
Islam versus via first round submission.
Over Volk?
Yeah, Volk.
First round submission? You are tripping, bro.
Did you not see how big and powerful Islam Makhachev looked last fight?
Bro, no way, man. No way do I agree with that. First round? No.
Submission, yes. You get him to the ground and sub him.
Wow, you've got zero respect for Volkanovski, huh? You really do not like Volk.
No, I love Volk. I just think that there's bad matchups for him in weight classes above.
Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev sounds amazing to me. That sounds like a yes, sir. Please give me that. I want to see that fight.
See, it doesn't do much for me for some reason.
You really think Volk wouldn't be competitive? I completely disagree, man. I think he'd be real competitive.
At 155 versus a guy like Islam,
dude, he just beat the living shit out of the Korean Zombie. No one does that. No one does that to the Korean Zombie. No one.
The Korean Zombie has 1,000,000 miles on him, is 36 years old, isn't a big, powerful guy.
Well, what do you mean isn't powerful? No, he's got power.
He's got great technique. He's not a powerful guy. He's a long, thin fighter.
Okay, but he got absolutely annihilated.
Yes, he did. So I don't think Islam would take a tenth of those punches. He would close the distance. He would be the larger fighter, much larger, and he would be the more powerful fighter. So in those grappling exchanges, he would get to top control very easily on Volk. And then when you have Islam Makhachev in top control, it's only a matter of time. If you're paying attention to Volk, Volk is continuing to trim down his body, to get rid of body fat, to become more of a natural 145er. If you watch his fights from even 5-6 fights ago, he was
Thank you. Yes, I've watched the fights. Thank you, Fight.
Yeah, well, he used to be flabbier, and now he's getting more trim and aligned with his body. He's not going to be able to add weight, go up and compete with a guy like Islam who's cutting weight and is absolutely shredded.
I disagree. Jack. I legitimately, on record, disagree. I think Volkanovski versus Islam would be a really great fight.
I think I heard this on another show this week, but I think Volkanovski versus RDA is a fun fight because of the well-rounded game RDA brings to the table to test Volk everywhere. I wouldn't put him in there with a specialist at a weight up.
I hear what you're saying.
Out of his depth. Give him someone where he can fight to his strengths, because in the Islam fight, he will have no strengths. He'll be on his back.
Oh, wow. All right. Okay. Well, Fight Geek has spoken. He thinks Islam would destroy Volk. I'm not sure I agree with that, but
let us know in the comments who thinks he would win. Maybe we'll, because that's an interesting question.
Absolutely. I totally agree, guys. Let us know. Okay, last question, at least that I see, is from Matt at GoGo Safa. That's at GoGo Safa MMA. Love this guy. He says, hey, Phil and Mr. Fight Geek. Volkanovski put up a great performance this past weekend. Which opponents must he face next to be the featherweight GOAT? Also, if Jan wins his next fight against whoever his opponent is, do you give him the trilogy fight with Aljo, or is it dependent on how Jan wins?
I'll let you take those.
Yeah. Okay, so to answer that second question first, if Jan wins his next fight against an opponent, to give him the trilogy fight with Aljo, I think you do.
So if Peter Yan beats Merab in a 5-round decision, does he get a title off that?
Yes, and I don't care if that upsets people a little bit.
Well, what if Triple C's coming back and TJ Dillashaw gets the next fight? That means that
I'm assuming, of course, that Dillashaw loses to Aljo in this case. If TJ wins, then no, you can't give Yan the next title shot.
Correct. And then for the first part of the question, all Volkanovski has to do is beat Max one more time, and it's in stone. He's the greatest featherweight of all time.
I don't disagree. I hate to simplify it like that because it feels inappropriate. But I've been thinking a lot about it, and that's the only way to put it. I mean, it's true.
Well, Max beat Aldo twice to cement that he was the GOAT at that time. And if Volkanovski beats Max 3 times, I mean, there's not much more MMA math you could do. I mean, the guy's 3-0. He's on an amazing title run. The eye test from his last fight was as impressive as anything Max Holloway has ever done. So yeah, they're neck and neck right now.
I completely agree. Okay, so with that, Fight Geek, are we done for the day?
I believe so.
All right, take us away.
All right, guys, as usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil the MMA Dude, and we are at Split_podcast. It's 4 words, the Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.